are places I remember all my life.
George Martin was never just the Beatles' producer. He was the bridge between imagination and execution, the rare figure who could translate abstract ideas into timeless sound. Often referred to as the Fifth Beatle, Martin possessed an instinct that went beyond technical skill. He knew the difference between a good song, a clever experiment, and something that truly altered the course of music. By the mid-1960s, as the Beatles evolved from pop sensations into studio pioneers, Martin became the crucial figure who could distinguish between clever ideas and world-changing ones. In interviews, liner notes, BBC lectures, and his memoir, All You Need Is Ears, Martin repeatedly emphasized that while the Beatles wrote many great songs, only a select few crossed the invisible line into pure genius. Records where imagination, craft, emotion, and innovation fused seamlessly. What follows are 10 Beatles songs that George Martin regarded as the band's highest creative achievements, not simply hits, but cultural landmarks that redefined what popular music could be. Number 10. Help, 1965.
I need somebody help, not just anybody help.
On the surface, Help sounds like an upbeat pop anthem, but Martin understood its deeper significance. He later acknowledged that John Lennon's vocal delivery carried a sense of urgency and vulnerability rarely heard in mid-1960s pop. Martin admired how the song masked emotional distress beneath commercial polish. In hindsight, he viewed Help as one of the earliest moments where the Beatles allowed psychological honesty to seep into mainstream music, something that would soon define their later work. Number 9. In My Life, 1965.
There are places I remember all my life.
For Martin, In My Life was proof that maturity could coexist with simplicity. Lennon's reflective lyrics marked a departure from love song cliches, while the now famous piano solo, recorded at half speed to resemble a Baroque harpsichord, revealed Martin's subtle genius as an arranger. He often cited this song as one of Lennon's most emotionally sincere compositions, a quiet turning point where memory and introspection became legitimate pop themes. Number 8. I Am the Walrus, 1967. If some producers would have tried to restrain chaos, George Martin chose to embrace it. He saw I Am the Walrus as Lennon's deliberate rejection of logic and interpretation. The blend of radio snippets, orchestral absurdity, and nonsensical imagery fascinated Martin, not because it was random, but because it was controlled madness. To Martin, this track demonstrated that pop music could be surreal, confrontational, and intellectually playful without losing its impact. Number 7. Penny Lane, 1967.
Penny Lane, there is a barber showing photographs of every head he's had.
Bright, melodic, and instantly memorable, Penny Lane may not sound revolutionary, but Martin believed its genius lay in precision. Every element served a purpose. McCartney's nostalgic storytelling was enhanced by meticulous orchestration, culminating in the iconic piccolo trumpet solo, inspired by Martin's admiration for Bach's Brandenburg concertos. Martin viewed Penny Lane as evidence that genius doesn't always shout. Sometimes it smiles, perfectly balanced, endlessly replayable, and still resonating today, even in modern streaming playlists. Number 6. Here Comes the Sun, 1969.
Here comes the sun, here comes the sun.
Although produced late in the Beatles' career, Martin held Here Comes the Sun in special regard. George Harrison's composition combined optimism with harmonic sophistication, while Martin's orchestration subtly elevated the song without overwhelming it. In later reflections, Martin acknowledged Harrison's growth as a songwriter, noting that this track demonstrated emotional clarity paired with musical intelligence, a quality that has helped it become one of the most streamed Beatles songs in the digital era. Number 5. Tomorrow Never Knows, 1966.
Turn off your mind, relax and float downstream.
For George Martin, this was the moment the Beatles truly stepped into the future. Built on a single chord and constructed through tape loops, reversed audio, and heavily treated vocals, Tomorrow Never Knows shattered pop conventions. John Lennon famously asked to sound like the Dalai Lama chanting from a mountaintop, prompting Martin to route vocals through a Leslie speaker. Martin often described this track as the birth of the studio as instrument concept, a blueprint for electronic music, sampling culture, and experimental production decades later. Number 4. Eleanor Rigby, 1966.
Eleanor Rigby picks up the rice in the church where a wedding has been.
Eleanor Rigby stunned Martin, not through volume or complexity, but through emotional boldness. With no guitars or drums, the song relied entirely on a string octet inspired by Bernard Herrmann's film scores. Its themes, loneliness, anonymity, and quiet despair, were almost unheard of in chart music at the time. Martin believed this song permanently expanded the emotional vocabulary of pop, proving that commercial success and stark realism could coexist. Number 3. Strawberry Fields Forever.
Let me take you down, 'cause I'm going to.
George Martin famously called Strawberry Fields Forever a technical miracle. John Lennon loved two radically different takes of the song and asked Martin to merge them, despite mismatched tempos and keys. Through pitch manipulation and tape editing, Martin achieved what many engineers believed impossible. Beyond the technical feat, Martin admired the song's psychological depth. Its dreamlike ambiguity captured Lennon's inner world more honestly than almost any other Beatles recording, making it endlessly analyzed and rediscovered by new generations. Number 2. A Hard Day's Night, 1964.
It's been a hard day's night, and I've been working like a dog.
While often overshadowed by later experimental works, Martin believed A Hard Day's Night represented peak early Beatles brilliance. Its instantly recognizable opening chord, driving rhythm, and flawless pop construction demonstrated a band operating with instinctive genius. Martin saw it as proof that the Beatles mastered pop before they deconstructed it, an important reason their later experiments succeeded. Number 1. A Day in the Life, 1967.
I read the news today, oh boy.
If George Martin had to identify one recording that defined pure genius, this was it. A Day in the Life fused Lennon's detached surrealism with McCartney's everyday realism, connected by orchestral crescendos that embodied controlled chaos. Musicians were instructed to climb from their lowest note to their highest without structure, an avant-garde concept executed within a pop framework. The final piano chord, played simultaneously on multiple instruments and allowed to fade into silence, remains one of the most iconic endings in recorded music. For George Martin, this song represented the moment when pop, classical, experimental sound design, and emotional truth converged perfectly. Why George Martin called these songs pure genius? What united these 10 songs was not commercial success alone, but transcendence. George Martin admired how the Beatles repeatedly treated the studio as an active creative tool rather than a neutral space. They broke rules, abandoned formulas, and fused genres, yet never lost emotional accessibility. Even decades later, as these songs continue to rack up billions of streams and influence artists across genres, Martin's assessment feels increasingly accurate. These recordings didn't just define an era, they reshaped the future of music. In George Martin's eyes, that rare alignment of imagination, discipline, and emotional honesty is what made these Beatles songs not merely great, but pure genius.